Chip Baber, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jim, great to see you again. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's really cool to see you too as well. I was actually wanted to talk to you because I saw a video on the Oracle developers YouTube channel, about Oracle Code Innovate, and so I used to be involved in that program years ago, and so I wanted to catch up with you. You're still working the program. Obviously now it's virtual, and so I wanted to get to have a conversation about what's going on. I keep on hearing good things about it. So tell me about Oracle Code Innovate, or such a virtual Code Innovate. What's going on these days?
Well, thanks, Jim. So, with COVID, kind of everything changed, and Code Innovate started as an in-person event where we'd go to our client sites and develop with them over the course of 4 or 5 days. Obviously, with COVID, being on site was taken out. So when the lockdown happened, we retooled the program and kind of re-innovated it from the ground up, keeping the things that really worked well, the true paradigm of code development, building a first pass prototype or MVP over the course of a week. But now we execute it fully via Zoom. We have gotten very creative with how we make the event fun. Some cool activities to start off and get our developers engaging with the customers. And then as we build, we still kept the idea of small group development. So typically what we do in Virtual Code Innovate is we'll start as a main group. Let's say it's 12 developers from a customer, and then 3 or 4 engineers from the Oracle side. And we'll break up into small teams, typically of size 2 to 4. And each team will get its own Oracle engineer for the week. And each team will work on a single use case over the course of a week. And we leverage Zoom breakouts. So we kind of still keep the aspects where we used to go to separate rooms to build and then come back together. We still do that using Zoom. The other thing that's changed is just the amount of time. So we, instead of doing full days, 8 hours, Zoom fatigue can set in. We now run about 4 hours a day. But we do it for 5 consecutive days, and it keeps the energy level up, and then it also keeps the innovation up. So sometimes you build on something, you get away for a few hours, you come back the next day, and you're like, "Oh, I got it! That's what I need to do." So in many ways, that's kind of led to some real cool innovation in our program over the last few events.
Yeah. So you said a lot there. I mean, I remember for the live events years ago, what was really cool about this, and actually I should back up. You run this whole program, right?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
cool.
We run it for all North America and Canada,
Okay.
my team today.
Great. So I remember one of the things I remember mostly was, we would go onto a customer site, and it was very, very clear that we had the Oracle engineers and the customer engineers working together on projects, but they weren't just hypothetical projects or real cool things to do. They were projects the customer needed and wanted, right? So they were real projects. And what really struck me is this whole Agile Scrum sort of a model, which I want to get into detail about here. But what really struck me is that as you brought teams together, people were really into it. They had a limited time, basically about a week or so, 3 or 4 days, and they really got into it. And that was live. How did you sort of take that energy, because you were at these events and I was at these events.
Yeah.
People describe them, "Oh, I love this." I mean, people actually use those words when they describe these events. So how did you take that energy from the live events and move it online? Obviously we have Zoom, and I wanted to talk to you about what kind of tools you're using online now to sort of keep that energy flowing. So basically, let's walk through a little bit about how the whole structure works. We contact a customer, or they contact us. What happens there? They want to do a Code Innovate event.
I mean, that's a great question. So how do we get started? Usually what we do is we have a 30-minute meeting with an interested client or interested company where we talk about what the program is at a very high level. Like, what do we do over the course of the week? But one of the keys to success here is, when we have a company that's interested in co-developing with us in the cloud, they have to provide the use case. So one of the first things they do is say, "Hey, I'm really interested in an event. I would like to do an event around," and maybe it's, building a SaaS extension with Integration Cloud and Visual Builder Cloud Service, or whatever it may be. and to do X, Y, Z. So once they give us the use case, what we then do on the Code Innovate team is align the cloud engineers that can solve that use case. So we bring expertise into the room that's aligned with the technologies that we feel most likely are what's going to solve the problem. So that's step one. And then we do have a little bit of time between, when an event is accepted and when it's scheduled. I mean, to get our minimum requirement is at least 4 builders or developers from a client to be a part of the event for the course of the week. And it's a 16 to 20 hour commitment. So 4 hours a day for 5 days. And so we do typically have about a 3 to 4 week lead time. So if they ask for an event, it's about a month out. That lets us line the right engineers. But in that period of time leading up to the event, we meet 30 minutes a week. We talk about the use case in more detail. We help them configure their tenancy, so we're not waiting for data to load or service provisioning when the event starts. And when the event starts, we're hands on keyboard, man. We're building. We're doing what my guys love best. True code development.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting to see actually live. So during the event, there's actual like a flow of there's like a flow of events. There's some real specific things. You're getting teams together. You're doing whiteboard sessions. Walk me through some of that in terms of how it actually happens on the ground. Well, actually, this would be virtually, but it's the same thing virtually, right?
Yeah.
But you're still doing the same.
It's a very similar formula. So our event will actually start, we kick it off we're not big PowerPoint people in the development world. So we kick it off with like a handful of slides just so they know who we are. And then one of the things we did in person was an event, a team building event. That's how our events still start. We have come up with very creative ways to use annotations in Zoom to do like a 60 circle exercise where everyone draws on the same Zoom screen at the same time in a creative fashion. And it creates these wonderful collages. We also have some fun round the room games that we play to get engineers to loosen up and talk. Mm-hmm. Now, after that, we go to what we call ideation. And in the in-person world, we used to use sticky notes and put it on the wall just like you would in Agile process. We still do that. Only now we're fully online. We actually use the common platform is GitHub, although in some cases we have a PowerPoint version as well. But we use GitHub, and we typically use the built-in projects feature that allow you to essentially put sticky notes in columns with your ideas, and then drag and drop in scope and out of scope. And that's worked quite well.
I've never used that application. Actually it works well for you guys?
It works fabulous.
Really? Okay.
And everyone can contribute in real time. So you're looking at the main screen in Zoom, and then each, builder on the team can add their note. It marks their comments and their names, and in real time pushes it up to the board. And then same thing with the goal statements, our project plans, our work assignments. And we also have swim lanes. So it's basically an online version of an Agile board.
A board, okay.
Like we used to do on the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things also, in terms of like an Agile, framework, most developers are already familiar with this, right? So, it's not a problem like sort of having to educate people. Older people like me probably have to be educated, but maybe the younger ones, everybody knows how to do this stuff, right? So, I would imagine that you can just flow through these events online and then, get to work.
Exactly. Typical ideation for us, granted, we have talked about what we're going to build, for a few weeks before, but typical ideation is about an hour. And most of the time it's the details, what is it that developers truly want to learn, what APIs they want to try, or what do they want to do in a particular PaaS service like Analytics Cloud. And then we prioritize, right? So each team will basically form a single goal statement on the workload or use case they're going to work over the course of the week. So we get consensus on the ideas, group them together into in-scope at the very end of ideation. But it's typically an hour and a half max to get all that done. Cool.
All right. And then as I remember, and I don't know if you're still doing this, but there's, after the work, there's some, essentially final presentations, basically, right? And then there's awards and things like that. You're still doing that as well?
We are. So we still have, we call them our lightning talks. They're still called lightning talks. the bulk of the event is co-development. So that's days 2 through 4.5, I'd say, with 2 hours left to go in the event. We pause everyone's development process, kind of put a code freeze on, so to speak. We take 1 hour, and our engineers will help the builders from our customers create a 3-slide presentation and rehearse their demo. And then we invite leadership in, our management in from, or stakeholders on the use cases that they're building for, sometimes even line of business, in to watch what's created. And this is where my Oracle engineers kind of sit on the sideline and just have fun smiling at what was built as the builders showcase their work to their leadership. And then we do have creative award names that are given out at the end. So all of that is still there, just in a virtual fashion.
And as I remember from actually witnessing these and seeing that the customers, some of the executives would come in, the engineering executives, and these presentations would take place. How, first of all, competitive. First of all, it was competitive. They wanted to win. But second of all, it was taken very seriously. The discussions that the engineering managers would have with the engineers about what they built was really serious, because up front they're working on projects that the customer needs, right? And so I was just very struck by that this just wasn't an event where it was kind of fun and stuff. This was taken with the utmost of seriousness at that final presentation, even though it was still lighthearted and fun. The engineering conversation around it was very serious.
Well, you nailed it, Jim. I mean, the goal is obviously you want to have fun at an event, but our goal of Code Innovate is to help jumpstart cloud development. And the fastest way that we found to jumpstart code development is to have our engineers, our kind of master builders, so to speak, in the cloud, work hands on hand in the trenches with you and your challenges. And when we pair the customer's knowledge of the problem they need to solve with our knowledge of the cloud, not only do we educate everybody, right? We're learning as much as they're learning. They may be learning about the cloud. We're learning about their business and how we can help them. But the goal is to produce an MVP, or minimal viable product at the end of the week, so that it's a true starting point. We've done in 20 hours what may have taken customers a month to figure out on their own without our help. And in turn, we can provide some real business value. In fact, we worked with a media company at an event not long ago. They had digital and print, or digital and billboard space in and around a very large geographic area. And they had pockets of their ad space where they were highly dense. In other words, they had a lot of billboard and digital media. And there were other areas where they had almost zero, but their competitors had a huge pocket. And this particular event served to look at their competitors' ad space and their ad space and compare and contrast the two, so that they could essentially do short-term leases or trade properties, because it was mutually beneficial for them to share the ad space or have broader coverage for their media space. And so we did this using Analytics Cloud, some of our machine learning technology, and our spatial technology. And in turn with that, they had a second team at the event while they were determining the gaps. The second team at the event was determining the pricing models using our data science platform. So if we expanded our ad outreach coverage to this area, what could we sell the ad space for? And what would the profit be? And this particular event, when the developers showed it to leadership, they were floored. They had never seen, they thought about this, but they'd never been able to visualize it and then show the predictions in Analytics Cloud. And not only did that presentation go very well, a few months later, that actually ended up going live, and they're using it today to make help their business.
It's like the ultimate live demo. You created an actual project. I mean, it's really kind of cool. So you mentioned a specific customer there. Give me some examples of some events in the past that maybe some of the projects that have taken place and some of the technologies that were used.
Yeah, well, I'll start. I'm going to try to, give a little diversity of audience too, right? So when people think of the word Code Innovate, they think, oh man, I've got to be a hardcore programmer to do this. And the truth is that you don't. Code Innovate is a name, but anybody who could build in our cloud, we're willing to do an event with. And so we had an event with an HR department recently, and it was a common problem where their workforce was dispersed with COVID. They needed to look at merit increase, or they needed to look at raises and promotions, and go through that cycle. And they were doing it in spreadsheets, and the spreadsheets that were being passed around, the versioning was difficult to say the least.
Yeah.
And they were worried that people who deserved promotion or increase weren't going to get it, or in the case of clerical error, somebody may get it and then in worst case scenario have it pulled back. So we did a Code Innovate with them. They were not hardcore programmers, but we used our low code development tools. We used our autonomous database in our first event to essentially automate that using Applications Express. Now, the cool thing here, Jim, is they started using that application. That was the first event. They came back to us months later and they said, man, now we need this to tie into our HR system. Can you help us do that? Can you help us expand it a little bit and then tie in?
Wow.
So all of our code, all of our updates at the end of the day push in automatically. And so we did a second event with them where we included the Integration Cloud, which is probably our most common product, believe it or not, in Code Innovate to be used, Integration Cloud, to push back to their HR system.
Really?
And so, it really speaks to, in that example, like you don't have to be super deep technically to do this event to get a lot of value out of it.
And if they're sharing spreadsheets via email, presumably it's a smaller company as opposed to, say, like a huge enterprise company. It seems to me that you guys are actually having events with all different size companies as well.
Oh, that's true. Exactly. So our minimum attendee, so to do an event, you have to have at least 4 builders attend for the week, right? But 4 is the minimum, right? So we have one large enterprise customer who started. They were one of our first Code Innovates. In fact, you were a part of it years ago when it was live. They've now done 5 Code Innovates with us. And the last event, they had over 40 attendees in the virtual Code Innovate.
Virtually, wow.
So, and I think, it's hard to say all the different use cases they worked on, but most of it was around extensions from our SaaS application with Integration Cloud, Visual Builder Cloud Service, and then advanced analytics and machine learning on the data. But the cool thing about that is that we've developed a partnership with them where, when they finish sprints, right, when they're ready to start new projects or new ideas, really Code Innovate has been built into the fabric of their thought process. Really? They're like, hey, to launch this, right, why don't we just do a Code Innovate? We'll invest in a 20-hour sprint. We'll see what sticks, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and start the process.
Actually, you're right. It really is just a sprint. It really is just, it's just, you're doing it between 2 companies. That's all, So yeah. Interesting. Really, really interesting. 5. Wow. I think I was on number 2 at that time, but 5 is incredible. When you're breaking up, actually, let's just stick on that for a second. When you get a larger group, you get 40 people, just on their side?
Just on their side, yeah.
Okay.
It would be another about 10 from the Oracle side.
Okay, so
to cover that.
Okay, so you got 50 people. Obviously, you're breaking up into rooms, like when you have teams and stuff. You're breaking up into rooms for this, right? Do you still come back into the center as a group altogether, or do you stay split up? I'm talking specifically on Zoom here.
Specifically on Zoom. So we start the day together. We have a morning check-in and go around the room, and one person from each of the development pods speaks about what is it they've done, what is it they're doing next, and any challenges or blockers. And we actually end our day with that as well. And specifically to the issues or blockers. Once again, we do document that, like we would and with normal code, we, next to their projects in their Git repo or in their PowerPoint, we can actually document any issues or blockers. And then outside of hours, when the event ends, the Oracle team, if it's a non-SR blocker, in other words, if it doesn't have to go to support, but it's like, man, how do I, or how could I, or where's the sample code? Right. We really try to reach out to the entire Oracle ecosystem. And that's kind of the power being virtual and the speed that it offers. Right. To pull back in those answers or get those experts for 15 or 20 minutes the next day for the small group. But we still start each day and end each day together as a team. Cool. With the goal of producing, each group produces an MVP that they have to showcase at the end of the week.
Right. So is the interaction with Zoom fluid enough? Like, in other words, you're coming in and out of rooms, right? I mean, you're basically moving in and out of separate rooms for these things.
Yeah, it's very fluid.
It's
So
okay.
I've got to hand it to the Zoom platform. I mean, they get this built in, and we can essentially. We used to have the concept of engineers that floated around. So maybe you have a skill set
Right.
that is particularly unique, and they need to help 3 different groups, but for an hour each, as opposed to 4 hours. So Zoom even provides the ability for these floater cloud engineers to easily hop from room to room. And the same goes on the client side. We have, kind of DevOps managers or dev managers that want to see what everyone's doing. So we give them kind of the ability to hop from room to room, just like we were in person when we used to walk around.
Right.
You can do that.
Interesting. Cool. I would imagine that, because it's been a few years now since the program has been running, each event is slightly different. There's different use cases based on the customer needs. You have to provide for each event a set of engineers with that particular skill set, right? I mean, so I would imagine it changes over time, right? You have to draw from your team, maybe from other teams at Oracle.
It's absolutely correct, Jim. So this is where the thought process of Code Innovate is really different. In a lot of cases in the past, Oracle has kind of had a push model, like, hey, we've got this new autonomous workshop. It's awesome. We're gonna push it out to you. Would you like to take it? Code Innovate is the exact opposite. It's a pull model. Okay, tell me what your problem is. It's never a single pass service. It's always multiple, and I'm going to do my best to align the right cloud engineers, be it from my team, be it from product management, who often partners at these events, to be there to solve that problem, right? That's our goal. Let's see if we can't solve this problem over the course of 20 hours. And so we kind of pull together the right resources to solve the problem for the event, wherever they may come from within work.
Right. That's really cool. It's really cool because that also affects Oracle as well, because each time you work with a customer, that experience actually gets into the Oracle engineering organization as well. This is what we did. This is how we solved the problem. It was unique here. This was easy. This was hard, whatever the situation was, because you're not only working with the same people, there's different people involved. It's kind of interesting. Almost a reciprocal relationship. Learning should go, both ways.
Oh, and it absolutely does. Yeah. I mean, after each event, one of the things that we speak about on our debrief calls is, what could the product do to make this easier? Did it have everything we needed? Which in some cases it does. But in some cases, right, it's a unique challenge. We're like, oh man, if the product could only do this, we actually submit that feedback back to product management, along with the use case. And in some cases, they've been able to either give us workarounds or potentially even get it seeded for the long-term product map.
Yeah, it's almost like a product development feedback mechanism, Cool. All right, Chip. Well, this has been great. Is there anything I've left out? I wanted a great update, and I got it, but I have to be leaving something out. Is there anything else we need to cover?
Well, Jim, I just want to end with, while when we do an event, customers own all the intellectual property created, right? And 80% of the time, it's actually done in their tenancy, so it's in a development compartment. But when we come across particular challenges that are like, oh my gosh, this was really cool, we solved it, we do anonymize that, and we do publish that to the developer YouTube channel. So there are a lot of I think, cool videos on my side of challenges we've hit or how-to walkthroughs technically out there that if you want to just see, how could I, or what could you do, feel free to take a look. There's some excellent videos.
Cool. I will link to everything, as they say in the show notes. And great. Chip Baber, good friend. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.